We went and got the mid-tier DSPs that did 50 to 100 million monthly active users first to prove that we had scale.
The story is very important. So do you guys focus a lot on branding and content creation? Does that all
These team building exercises, like these biographies that people have to give, that are normally an hour to 2 hours, that cover almost their entire life. Like,
hello, Martians. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing on Mars. Today we got Andrew Batey. He's currently the CEO and founder of a company called Beatdapp. It's a 500 startups company, and basically what they're doing is they're preventing fraud on streaming apps, catching streaming anomalies on apps like Spotify or any kind of other streaming platforms, and just preventing the fraudulent activities on there. It's a very interesting company. They've raised some seed capital as well. Just really excited to talk to Andrew because his background is quite interesting. Andrew, welcome to the show.
thanks. Just correction quickly. We might be one of the only companies that have co-CEOs. So I actually have a co-founder that's my co-CEO as well. So if he's listening, I see you.
Okay. Cool. So you got co-CEO and co-founder situation going on. Your background is very interesting. I'm looking at your background right now. You've been a CMO at a variety of different companies. You have a very long history in marketing. How would you describe your background and your career leading up to Beatdapp?
Yeah, so I basically did marketing in college because it was what I called, the degree of the obvious. It just seemed really easiest to me to get a degree. I think I majored more in drinking than I did in actually, doing schoolwork. And then I went into film and TV. So I really worked, I really knew what my path was pretty early on. I started interning for a literary agency when I was like 15, 16, and had a strong mentor that helped guide me in that. And I kind of knew exactly where I wanted to go, which was not marketing. And it's crazy. You chase this dream of trying to be an agent in film and television. You work on some really amazing projects. And then you realize you hate your job. You spend a few years in and you realize that's not the job you wanted. And fortunately, I had made some money along the way. And so I started investing in things. And I was really young. I basically, for all intents and purposes, graduated high school when I was like 16. So I was kind of 2 years ahead of everybody in terms of timing. And
Wow.
so what's interesting with that is I started investing in kids that were my age building things that were technical. And because they were what I was using. And so, for example, I invested in a company that was building Facebook games at the end of 2006 and 7 when it was still largely EDU based. So you had to have an EDU address to talk to other EDU, to talk to other students. And you couldn't really talk to other campuses yet. So they built this cool, it's funny now, it's basically a metaverse. It's a virtual bar for you to circumvent the rules and talk to people from different campuses. So one of the things I invested in. And that's really kind of what led me down into marketing, because I didn't really know a lot about marketing other than, I was primarily, when you're an agent, you're in sales. So, when I decided I wanted to leave being an agent, I didn't have a lot of real options. I didn't know what I was going to do in terms of, I guess you have options, but I didn't really want to stay in what I was doing was being in literary. And these kids I invested in were starting to take off. And they really needed help because they didn't know how to monetize what they had. They built a lot of really cool tech. But at the time, I remember sitting in rooms with them pitching entertainment brands, and they'd say, "We don't need Facebook. Facebook's for kids. This will never take off. We have a website." And so it was really interesting to be so early on something. And so that's how I got into marketing. Was I decided to jump in with them. We struggled to monetize the sort of app and things we built. So instead, we started building those tools for others and really focused in on music. So we helped a lot of musicians sort of break out or get noticed using these sort of techniques in digital. And so back then, I think I was mostly known for growth hacking, like a trick here and there, things we could do that would seem kind of crazy, but would get the job done. I can describe some of those things like jacking, tricking the YouTube algorithm with underlaid ads, all kinds of like cool things that were innovative at the time that have probably been closed down now. But at the time, it was like the Wild West. And it was really fun. So I just learned a ton. And as the agency grew, we grew to a pretty large size company, 100 plus contractors and people. And you start looking at that and you start thinking about, and you meet with all these other brands. And so you start doing it for YouTube shows. You create a YouTube show or help support a YouTube show. You help a brand, acquire users or do CPG stuff. And as you start growing as an agency, you just learn more and more and more about marketing. So I would say my history is largely based in consumer marketing.
Right.
And then that framework turned more into growth frameworks where I started thinking heavily around how you leverage product, how you leverage customer success, this sort of overall cross functional team dynamic to being able to drive growth, not just user acquisition, but can you drive growth through a product change? Can you drive growth through sort of a customer experience change? And then looking at it holistically from that view, and then building what is now today for most people growth models. It sort of looks at acquisition, retention, linear channels, all the kinds of things you look at for how do you prioritize your effort to get the highest multiple of growth as you're marching forward. So I would say what I do is very now based in numbers. It's like you build a qualitative model, you build a quant model, and then you just test everything. It's just a lot of fast iterative testing, but but my background really roots in growth hacking. Like that's really where I started. And I think that's the framework from which I think a lot of things through.
Yeah. So just to recap, so from 2000, really 2006 was when you kind of got into the whole agency world, and then all the way up until 2018, you're really focused on B2C, like you mentioned, the B2C world. And then in 2018, you joined a company called Build Direct, and that's more B2B, right? Um,
Yeah, it was still B2C. I mean, they frame it as B2. They went through bankruptcy protection, and there was a whole executive team that came in to kind of help them through bankruptcy protection.
right.
And then afterwards, I came in on the team that was helping restructure, like come out of the bankruptcy protection and go.
Mm,
So a bunch of Amazon execs, which I learned a lot from, which was actually really helpful when I started Beatdapp. But
yeah.
and so a lot of them are investors now in Beatdapp, which is kind of cool. But at the time, it they sold direct flooring to consumers. Like if they'd framed it mostly as DIY, so they assumed that most people were buying their own flooring. I think the insight we ended up with was that like 65% of people who were buying it for themselves still had a professional contractor. So ultimately,
Oh,
it's really still
okay.
a B2B sale. It just was like masquerading as a B2C sale.
Ah, I see. I see. And so that was 2018 when you joined and you helped them through that you know, that period of time. But around the same time, 2018, that's also when you started Beatdapp, right? So tell
Yeah.
us a little
So
tell us a little bit about that and how it got started.
Yeah, so I moved to Canada back in 2016 to help actually another B2B company and scale. They're in the dental healthcare industry. And while I was there, I met my now co-founder Poria, who's the CTO. He's this brilliant engineer, and we really, I guess, became tight on crypto. Like I started mining Bitcoin in 2011. I built a pretty large trading desk from there. I've been involved in a lot of big projects and invested in a lot of crypto projects. And so we started a crypto club at work. We were building like trading algorithms and stupid little games. Like we even built a game eventually on for foosball with an ELO ranking system, so the devs couldn't log into the backend and change their scores, so it had to be on chain.
Mm,
Like all kinds of like little things that we built along the way. And I realized really quickly he was such a brilliant person. In the same side of things, Morgan and I, my other co-founder and co-CEO, we had gone through grad school together and have known each other for almost a decade. And so we'd always wanted to do something together. He had moved to LA the same time I moved out. So I was still flying to LA pretty much every other week or so, or at least once or twice a month to go to football games. Like we still had season tickets to the Rams. So we would all go
mm,
to games together. We'd tailgate together. And it wasn't just Morgan and I, it was Morgan and I and a bunch of music execs that we had all known for years. I didn't work in music anymore at that time, but you all stay friends with everybody, like you just
yeah.
become close with people. And so it was at one of these games that one of the execs said, "Hey, we have no idea how many times a song is played. Like a streaming service gives us a report. We don't actually know the number to be true. It's just, we just assume it's true and invoice off of it. But then we go in and audit." And
Yeah.
so they asked us, could you build a blockchain tool that would track the number of times songs were played? And
Mm.
because otherwise what they have to do is hire like an auditing firm. They go in, it takes up to 2 years to complete an audit. They audit once every 3 years. So back in 2018, they were quite literally auditing 2013. Like it's so far delayed, and they might end up getting pennies on the dollar because it's so far later. So what they wanted was like a real-time reconciliation system. So we started out really thinking about how do we build a really fast blockchain that could track the number of times songs are streamed. And that's what we did. We have almost 30, I think it's like 36 patents on blockchain technology.
Wow.
We own some really incredible blockchain tech for stream tracking, but that didn't really solve the problem, because if you track the number of times songs are played, the real issue is how many need to be removed. We don't disagree that the song played. The question was like the intent behind the play. Was that fraud
Mm.
or was that not fraud? And
Yeah.
blockchain didn't solve intent. It just said it just was an event tracking occurred. And so the issue then became, how do we solve the fraud problem? Because if we can't solve fraud, we can't actually audit. And so around 2020, 21, we started really heavily focusing on the fraud aspect. And that's really where our company sort of took off, and we became the industry leader there. But ultimately, I think it was all the sum of the parts, like my growth hacking spirit and network. Morgan actually was a copyright lobbyist, so he helped extend copyright protection for the major labels. So his network included
Right.
Poria's genius, blockchain technology and expertise. You put us all together with the right opportunity, which is sort of all the right blending of things that occurred, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's how it started. And when I took the build direct job, I told them I have this thing called Beatdapp. Could be nothing. I have no idea if it's going to go anywhere, but I need to carve out the IP, and I need the ability to kind of keep working on it at the same time. And if it takes off, I'm going to just jump and go. And everyone was pretty cool about it.
And it took off. So we're gonna get into all the numbers in a little bit.
Yeah.
But first, before we do that, we always start off the show with a shot of hot sauce. I got the same hot sauce as I have for the last 4 weeks. I'm in Korea right now, so I got a pretty hot sauce from Korea. What do you have for us today?
I got the only thing that's left in my house right now, which is Red Hot Franks.
Oh, that is a little light, but we're gonna accept it for today. Um, I got a shot glass. I don't know
Normally
if
I'd
you got,
go way hotter,
yeah.
but sorry.
How
We just
shot?
moved in this new house, so we don't have everything yet.
You're in Miami right now, right? Or
Yeah, I'm just a little north in Florida.
okay, Northern Florida. So I got this. Do you have a shot glass, or are you just gonna go from the bottle?
I'm gonna go straight from the bottle.
Oh my
Maybe by
god.
the end of this, I'll end up drinking the whole bottle. We'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. Cheers. It's gonna be fun.
Cheers. Oh, no, it's actually disgusting. You can see, but I
Oh,
drink
that's a
lot.
lot. Okay. So it's like 5 a.m. right now in Korea. I haven't eaten anything yet, so it's gonna hurt.
Can burn a bit.
It's gonna burn. So hopefully you can answer all the questions that I give you, so that we don't have to take
Right.
any shots of hot sauce. Hopefully. So first, so that's very interesting. So you got a marketer, you got a copyright guy, and you got a tech guy. That's kind of seems to be um, a very good recipe for you guys. Where are you guys at right now as a company? I know you guys have raised some money. Can you share some stats on that? I hope you can. And like, where are you guys at in terms of it's 5 years in now from when you guys first started? Anything you can share with us to let us know where Beatdapp is right now as a company?
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing is really fundraising. Luckily this is my fifth company, so I've had a couple successes and exits, and people trust me. So I think people trust that you'll figure out a way, even if it's not perfect, winning the pre-seed rounds and stuff like that. So in total, we haven't raised that much money. We only raised 5.5 million USD. We've had another couple million, like 2 or 3 million in Canadian grants. One of
Okay.
the big reasons I started the company in Canada, because Morgan and I talked about whether this should be LA or we should do this in Canada. And the reason we actually focused in Canada was because of shred credits. So there's so many opportunities for Canadian reimbursements on salaries and
Right.
wages and programs that don't exist. And having raised money
Mm.
previously in Canada and also the US for most of my companies, I knew that if we could get free money and tap into the free money that the Canadian government offers, we could get further with less dilution, which would be important later. It gives us most of the leverage as we scaled. So I was super frugal. I made sure we really did everything we could to preserve our cash position, and and that paid off leaps and bounds for us, right? Because we were really careful with our money from day one. Even when we had lots of it, we just were always careful. We raised on fundraising milestones as opposed to when we needed money. So we would
Yeah.
hit like major milestones, like signing really big partners, and then we would go to the VCs and say, "Okay, look, we just did this. We need more capital to keep going." And so I
Yeah.
would always raise on these milestones that were advantageous for us, and and that really just put us in a really efficient position. So today, we're the number one in the space by miles. I think because we had started in blockchain and gained everyone's trust over years. It generally in the music industry takes 3 to 4 years for people to trust you. We were able to short
Mm.
circuit that because they'd known us from previous stuff in the music industry. So we had a little bit of an edge, but we still had to prove our tech worked. We still had to sort of do the Pepsi challenges and all the sort of things they require from you. So that just takes time. It's a really slow process. These large partners have stakeholders in all these different departments that are sometimes, you know, uh, you know, counterbalanced from each other, so or a little bit opposed to each other. So depending on what one department views as a priority, the other one might not. So it just takes a long time to sort of get through that stuff. But yeah, now I think I think we have a very legitimate chance at being probably a real true Canadian anchor company, $1 billion company. And I think that in the next 12 to 18 months, we will have 70% market share,
Holy
or
smokes.
higher. So I think that
Wow.
we are well on the way to where we want to be. It took us a few years to figure that out, because we built the blockchain tools first. And I still
Yeah.
believe the blockchain tool is useful, but, kind of had, do the regular startup stuff, had to kind of find product market fit, don't burn capital until we got there, really just sort of put one foot before the other and make sure we get to the right place and try not to trip ourselves up.
Okay, so I'd love to dig into how you guys remain lean as a startup. Obviously, that's very important, and I think a lot of our listeners would find that interesting. But I want to ask a quick question first. You mentioned 70% market share right now. How is that calculated? Is that by total number of songs
Yeah.
reviewed
So
or
the way I
audited, or
visualize
like
it
how
is
does it work?
I, I think by the end of this year, like again, that's a projection for this year. So I'm hoping that by the end of this year, based on I have a clear line of sight, I think, into where we're going. I
Yeah.
believe we have a chance to sort of have call it 60 to 80% market share by streams. So total number of streams played. Um, you're never going to have. Oh, there's hundreds of streaming services that are smaller, so there might be some like regional players in, like Africa or LATAM or APAC, for example. But in terms of volume of streams played globally, we're talking about like we are already ingesting trillions and trillions of streams and discrete data points. Sorry, not trillions of streams, but all the data points that go along with sort of fraud detection. And so
Mm.
so that's what I mean. It's a bit interesting, but it's one of those things where our focus was going middle up. We went and got the mid tier DSPs that did 50 to 100 million monthly active users first to prove that we had scale. And once we proved that our tech could do scale, then we started turning towards the bigger players and then allowing all that momentum to sort of just sweep up the smaller ones that were downstream because we become the sort of de facto winner there. So instead of chasing every DSP, we really focused in on 5 to 8 that we thought were like the most critical to building momentum. And then once we had that momentum and we could prove scale, then we started going up. And that's where we're at now, is sort of proving that that we have to scale and sort of just now just turning customers as live as fast as we can, moving through the system.
So you mentioned you guys are number one right now. So I stream a lot of my stuff on Spotify. Would Spotify then be considered as one of your competitors, or they don't do fraud detection, or do they not do it
So
in-house as well?
Most streaming services have an in-house team, and they do it really well. Like they do it to the best of their abilities. So most streaming services aren't like doing nothing. Like they have really great teams. I think the nuance here is that there is a lot of fraud. You're not talking about like 1 or 2%. You're talking about billions of dollars that are going out the back door every year. There are sophisticated entities that have shell corporations that are uploading fake music or alternative tracks. They have bots that are playing those things. And it's one of the only places where if you play a song, you get paid. And so they're just playing their songs and getting paid. And how the music industry works is normally that money from all the like subscription revenue and advertising revenue would get split amongst the real artists and the real labels. So if you inject a bunch of fake stuff, you're just taking money from those real artists. And that's what's happening today, billions of dollars worth. So to answer your question, every streaming service has a fraud or trust and safety team, or most of them do. But they're not really allowed to just share their data with each other. Like if you're a Spotify, you're not going to go to Apple and say, please take all of my data on all my users. Let's collaborate. If you're a large like label, you probably won't do that either. And so what you need actually is somebody, just like in banking or in e-commerce, you need a party that can look across all of these different vendors and say, hey, we recognize fraud here, 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 and here. Here's all the algorithms. Like we have hundreds of models, unsupervised, supervised models. We're looking, it's like whack-a-mole. Every time we close one down, they kind of find a new creative way. So we're just actively sort of building a library of known fraud use cases and all the different ways that they defraud systems. And we have such a head start compared to everyone else. It's just hard to imagine somebody else coming in at this point and doing it better than us because of the data volume we have, because of all the partners who have trusted us and given us first party proprietary data. It's not like we're going and pulling API calls. Like we're getting data from their systems. And so it's just a very different level of data. And it's so broad that we can build really sophisticated models that any individual DSP will have a hard time, building themselves. And that's proven true. So anyway,
you're saying
we make those teams more successful.
Okay, so you're saying like services like Spotify and like a Stitcher or like a Google podcast, they would probably use you to detect fraud within their own systems, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we would sit on their data. We'd return back results, and there's two types of results we return back. There's the product side results. So let's say that there's a fraudulent, I'm just going to say podcast taking off. We don't actually, this isn't maybe a primary use case, but for example, you don't want to promote that podcast or that song to a bunch of people if it's fraud. It just makes the problem worse. Right. And because they have so many algorithmic driven playlists or suggestions or recommendation engines, if the stats trick the engine, they end up just propelling that thing forward and causing a way bigger problem. So the first part that we can return back to sort of DSPs or streaming platforms is saying every day, these are our fraud cases. These are the ones we are like 99.9% certain is fraud. Don't make these worse. So then internally they can downgrade those and say, don't recommend them to people. Don't propel them. Don't put them into playlists. Don't do these things. Then at the end of the month, which has nothing to do with the product side, it's just pure sales, we can say, here's all the known fraud at 99.9%. And that allows them to back up the sales report so they're not paying the wrong people. So if we find, let's say, 200 million streams that are fraudulent out of, say, 3 billion, then that means everyone else that was a legitimate stream gets paid more money. Because the way that the industry works is they get paid a percentage of the pool. So if you do 100 streams out of 500 total on the platform, you get 20%. If somebody that is defrauding the system makes up 100 of those, now what you should have gotten was 100 of 400. You should have got 5% more money, but you just didn't because this fraud was existing in the pool. So we help them extract that known fraud at absolute certainty and then just pay people the correct amounts that are owed. the streaming services want to pay people correctly. They're not trying to defraud the artist. They want
Yeah.
every artist to be paid right. It's just hard for them to maybe identify all the fraud because their business isn't being the police. Like their business is delivering the best product experience, not trying to be the police of the internet or streaming.
So let me ask you this: do you have like? Can you name some of the larger clients that you're working with? Like, is it the Spotify's of the world, or something that can be disclosed?
I'll have to take a shot on that one. I think the nobody wants to wear the scarlet letter, so
yeah,
I'm hoping that in the next really like 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even 12 weeks, we have a number of these that are going to allow us to start talking about it. But ultimately, we've kind of had to just be quiet about it. And they talk amongst themselves, and obviously internally within the industry, people know who we're working with, but it never comes from us. So if they feel like telling people, that's fine. But we never really externally communicate that.
Yeah. All right.
Man, this is gonna hurt.
This is gonna.
Cheers. Yeah, that's so gross. Oh.
Ooh. Okay.
It's not even that hot. It's just so disgusting to chug so much of it at one time.
That's why I told you to get a shot glass so you can control it.
Yeah, it's worse.
Right.
I don't know how much I'm chugging, but half this bottle's gone. So.
Oh my goodness.
That's gross.
All right. So that cannot be disclosed. You guys are the number one in the industry. You guys are managing a lot of discrete data points, as you mentioned, number one at almost 60% of the market. How did you guys get here? What, you guys are 5 years in. What were some of the marketing? I don't know. Were there marketing tactics that allowed you to grow to this level? How does it even work? How does one, even if I wanted to start a kind of the same kind of service as you, like how would it even work?
Yeah, I think I will clarify that by the end of this year, I think we'll be at that percentage number. We're not there yet.
Okay.
But we have all the customers lined up. I think a function of that is how fast we can go. But I don't want to mislead people on the podcast right now.
Right.
In another year, we can do a catch up. Where are they now? I'll tell you where at 80 or something, hopefully. But that's the play. How we got here, I think, is mostly trust, and the fact that we could deliver on what we say we're going to deliver. So, first they had to trust Morgan and I. That comes with experience and time. Like how much time do we have in the industry? How much have they got to know us? Who vouches for us? So our advisor board was very critical. So the first thing we did was we actually lined out who could we get on our advisor board. Not even who, what positions do we need on our advisor board and where can they be the most helpful for our business? And so one of them was with international business, or international relationship. One sort of question mark we had was, is there a regulatory way for us to regulate fraud detection? And who could help us on that front in these foreign markets? Another question was around, having power within the majors. So who could we get out of the majors being Universal, Sony, Warner? Who could we get out of the major system that will really help us, move the needle with adoption with the big players? The same thing for the distributor side. So who from the DSP side can we get on our team? Who from copyright? So we actually just wrote out roles for people and what their backgrounds would look like, because at the time we weren't really sure who would fill, but we knew as we came across them, if you know what you're looking for your roadmap and the right person shows up, you can start plugging them in the right holes. And so our advisor board is quite amazing. Like the people that are advising us, and not just names on a deck, they're active. Because we wrote out exactly what we need them to do, they all have their own unique lanes and what they're trying to accomplish, their own networks, and sort of pushing us forward. So we have the former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, who's on our board, who we've traveled with, extensively, and helps us a lot with the international side, with regulatory and understanding what governments are doing. We have Sarah Scott, who represents a huge slew of A-list artists, and previously was sort of a copyright lawyer for Sony and Universal. We have Brian Turner, who's another amazing Canadian guy. He actually founded Priority Records, which, if people don't know, they they signed NWA. Like him and Jimmy Iovine created like the rap category in the '90s. Like they
Wow.
without Brian, you don't have all of these major rap acts. He was the first one to really take a leap and say like let's put these on CD and like actually commercialize this. So that we have so
Wow.
many incredible people around us, you know, and that was step one. So how do we build our army? What does our army look like, and who do we have there? The second part was the technical side. So how do we recruit the best technical people on our team to solve these highly complex problems? So that started with Poria, and then really slowly finding the right fits for everyone else. And one of the ways that we really focused on keeping that technical talent was focusing on team culture and not culture like team events. We do a lot of things that are like little that seem insignificant, but in totality are big. So we do like words of affirmation on Friday. Everyone who joins our team thinks it's probably a cult for the first 3 weeks because on Fridays you're like leaving. It's anonymized. You don't know who left it, but it's like, thank you so much, Poria. I'm so grateful for every time you get in the back and like start fixing tickets for me or doing my code reviews. It's like such nice, positive words of affirmation, but they're all anonymized. There's no politics to it. No one knows who submitted it. No one knows
Uh,
where it came from. It's completely anonymous, but it makes people feel really positive about the work and that everyone appreciates it. We have these team building exercises, like these biographies that people have to give that are normally an hour to 2 hours that cover almost their entire life, like what they did when they were kids, their biggest fears, what their hopes and aspirations are, things that are far past their technical skills. And we ask a lot of
mm,
engaging questions, and it's become a really big part of the company. So all these like little things help build trust and vulnerability amongst the team. And I think that's why it's such an amazing place to work. And in turn, by creating that sort of environment, we've never really lost any technical talent or anything. Like we have all the
mm.
same brilliant engineers. We've added amazing people to our team. And it's a place I think a lot of, including myself, feel special and feel like just incredibly, um, grateful to work for and work at. And it's just like a big, great, amazing team environment. And people say team all the time, but I think the proof is in the pudding for us in terms of people love working there. They don't leave and they invite their friends. And that's been really helpful.
And you guys are only less than 20, right? Your team? Less than
Yeah, we
20?
had more, but we spun a company out. And so the, we accidentally created another company. And so we sort of funded that company, let's say, with employees as it rolled out. So that company has like, I think 12 people as well now. So it's kind of
So
growing.
you guys, so I love that you guys do all that stuff. Company culture is so important, especially because you guys are a product driven or technical driven company. Keeping all that talent is very important. You guys should start adding hot sauce to your culture. Throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there.
I think our team would love that. We did a hot dog eating contest the other day, and I was definitely the only one that threw up, but it was
I'll
brutal.
supply the hot sauce next time you guys do anything. I'll come in. I'll bring all the I'll bring the heat. But so okay, so advisory board positions, that was very important. Technical was very important. What else helped you guys grow to the certain level that you guys are at now? Because with
Yep.
B2B, branding is very important and the
Yep.
story is very important. So do you guys focus a lot on branding and content creation? Does that all tie into your growth?
I think in normal B2B that is true. In the music industry, it's more relational than that because it's a really
Mm,
small group of companies that control the majority. Like Universal, Sony, and Warner collectively, I think have 70% market share between
yeah.
those three. If you get those three labels, you have 70%. And then they distribute, let's say, another 15 to 20% of major indies. So really you're at like 80 to 90% with those three parties. And the same thing on the
Mm,
DSP side. There's multiple DSPs in some regionals. So in India, you have four. You have like Hungama, Wink, Savin, Ghana, and then you also have Spotify and Apple, but like they're in Amazon, but they're all lower. Like I'm like everyone's on Savin. Like that's the number one in the market there. But you'd never hear about that being in the U.S. or Canada. And then
yeah.
in the Middle East, you have Ngami, and in sort of Africa, you have Boomplay and NetEase and like these other companies. So every region has like a major player, and so it comes down to trust. So do they trust you? Who will vouch for you? How do they meet you? And so from that perspective, the only thing that the sort of KPI we had internally was, do we get invited to their parties? Their
Oh,
like personal
wow.
stuff. So the thought we had was, if we can be in a place so many times that they become familiar with us and that they like us and they invite us to their barbecue, like, will they invite you to their house barbecue? That is the
Mm.
question. Will they invite you to their kid's birthday party? Like, are you around enough and consistent enough that they think of you and they're vote set for somebody to invite to something they're doing locally because they've seen you so much? So from that context, for the first 2 or 3 years, Morgan and I were literally on an airplane doing laps. So we'd go
Wow.
to like New York, Miami, Nashville, LA, Vancouver, London. I was over in India and Hong Kong and Singapore almost every month. And so what would
Wow.
happen is you just go, and what happens is in enterprise, you have these sort of deliverables. Cool, we're going to go work on this. And the next time we meet, we'll try to have an answer.
Mm.
Instead of just waiting for the next time you go, what we did was try to short circuit that and say, awesome, we actually have another reason to be here in 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to be here between these dates. Can we just set a time? And so what we did was sort of hack
Mm.
the next meeting in the current meeting and then just spend our lives going to all of these next meetings and sort of doing the work as we were moving. And so in
Mm.
a lot of ways, we were remote and relaying that stuff back to the dev team and Poria and all the guys that were and women that were helping. But what we were really doing is sort of just inching closer with every step, every time that they would see us in New York or every time they would see us. I've been to Nashville so many times, people actually think I live there. Like I get
Mm.
invited to house parties there, like events, Christmas events, like everything all the time. And what's interesting is like we are there a
Wow.
lot, but that's the gauge. Like, are you building enough of a relationship with these people that they want to talk to you or hang out with you outside of that meeting you have? And are they trusting of you? And I think the only way you can do that is
Mm.
time and sort of the repetition. I think people are kind of lazy generally. I think they go to the meetings and they come home. They're like 6 months later, they're going to go back to New York. It's hard to say I'm going to spend the next 3 years of my life on a plane and
Yeah.
actually just grind it out. And, in 2019, for example, Morgan and I
Mm.
were in 12 countries and 174 cities.
Oh
Like
my
that's
goodness.
absurd,
12 countries, 147 cities,
174 cities, I think it was. We had like a
174
tracking app.
cities.
It
And
was like
do you guys
tier two
always try
cities.
to sorry, do you guys always try to go to the same event, or do you guys try to divide and conquer?
Sometimes we divide and conquer. So there was a couple times where he would go through like uh, Sweden, London, and then we'd meet up in Asia, and I would do like the other circuit. So as we started getting busier, we would separate. But a lot of times there's
Wow.
value in both people being in the meeting at the same time because we
Yeah.
hear things differently. So he hears something one way, I hear something another way. We regroup afterwards and kind of set marching orders for what we think we should do and agree to. And so it's helpful for us both to be in the meetings at the same time, actually, so that because we have our own unique lens of seeing and hearing things. And so that's helpful because there's stuff he misses and there's stuff I definitely miss. And we work better together that way. So that's typically how we attacked it. And, it was hard. I mean, I spent, I think 10 months of the year gone in 2019. And,
Wow.
COVID was probably the best thing that ever happened for our industry, at least for us as Beatdapp, because suddenly we didn't have to be on planes. For the first time ever, the executive who said, next time you're in New York, I'll meet you, would say, hey, why don't we jump on a Zoom call? And so it was like
Mm.
the craziest thing because all of a sudden you could just get on Zoom and we would never have that. Before that was not even, you wouldn't dream of asking a senior exec to get on a video call with you. Like
No.
they wouldn't, they
Yeah.
want to see you in person. So the whole
Yeah.
industry moved and that really helped Beatdapp a lot.
Are there a lot of the meetings still on Zoom, or now everything is fully
For
back in
sure.
person? Yeah.
It's a good mix. What we try to do is have the meetings on Zoom because a lot of them now know us. We've spent all that time. Again, it's not like the pool of customers is ever growing in the music side. So I would say that we spend a lot of time on Zoom, just like keeping touch with people and staying up with everybody. And what we try to do is the in-persons around conferences. So the All That Matters conference in Singapore, you have, I think it's called Music Matters in India. You have the Music Biz conference in Nashville in every May. We're going to one next week called Nylon in London. So when you're there, we just set all of these meetings and sort of events with all of our known partners and try to just continue to build that in-person rapport with people and relationships. And I think the key there is that we actually like these people. Like
Yeah.
we really enjoy hanging out with them. If I wasn't in Beatdapp, I would still hang out with these people. And I think that that's, I think people understand when it's not authentic. So if you build like a real
Yeah.
relationship with people, it just feels right. And people want to do
Yeah.
business with people they like,
Exactly. Sorry, and I interrupted you earlier. You were mentioning between 174 cities, there's so many things going on that you guys use an app that tracks everything.
We just tracked our own. So there used to be an app that that Snapchat bought actually that would track all your locations. There used to be an app that would track all your locations, and then we would give you like a year-end wrap-up. So we were using it since 2018, and just sort of like was surprised by all the places we went and how many places we went for Beatdapp, and that's how I know the stats on that. Was from this like wrap. It was called Zenly. They might have got rid of it. I think they got rid of it, but yeah, it was a really cool experience. And the other thing that we did that short circuited, which goes back to the Build Direct days and before that, some Amazon like guys I know, is we started writing PR FAQs. And if no one's familiar, it's a press release with facts and questions written in the voice of the company itself. So if I'm Amazon, I'm writing it as Amazon and how it's going to affect our customers. And then FAQs for like 4 to 6 pages after. And what they do is the FAQ should be very specific, like how does the integration exactly work? Which exact programming languages are they using? How long will it take? How many headcount will this be or will we need contractors? And what we did was we actually wrote PR FAQs for every company we were trying to do business with so that we could hand them a document after the meeting. And that allowed them to not have to regurgitate what we told them in the meeting. And it was well written in a way that like the one page summarized all the value adds or the benefits of why X company would use us. And then all the facts and questions that they might ask from different teams, technical teams, finance teams, executive teams, leadership. And so we would have these questions. And every time we got a new one consistently, we would just add that to the FAQ.
And that
so
would
over
be
time,
the first meeting when you meet with the execs for the first
right
time.
after the first meeting, we'd say, "Hey, look, we pre-wrote this for you," and we'd actually they actually takes quotes. We'd look at who we're meeting with, and we'd pull quotes, and like we tell them these are fake quotes in your voice, but we'd actually write the press release from their opinion why this company is going to work with you, and then all the FAQs in their voice, and he gave them the edited version, so you can edit away, but now you have a starting point. So they would go in and make very small changes or whatever, share it with their team internally as if they did the work. And even if they didn't do the work, it doesn't matter. Like the point is everyone now can read the same document, have a conversation. Every question ideally answers somebody's question. Because if they call me and say, "Hey, how does integration work?" and I explain it, they might not articulate that the exact same way to the tech team that I was hoping. But by writing all of that out and providing this to them, they could just get to an answer quickly. Here are our clear objections as to why we think we can't move forward. How would you solve these? And then we can then just go straight to that. So that would short circuit like 6 to 8 months of time in the enterprise deals that it took. And that was just a lot of effort to say, "Hey, I'm going to write this whole document out for this customer. But after you meet with them, we've done the hard work for you so that you can have the conversation internally without having to summarize what we did here."
Yeah. So for me, obviously, like there's a question that's going to come up, but for me, I build a lot of relationships through my podcast. Like I'm meeting you, and sometimes we have second meetings, third meetings. I build a real relationship with my podcast guests, and but because most of my guests are kind of like in the startup to mid-level companies between $5 to $50 million or $70 million, they're quite busy. You're a very busy guy. We rescheduled this call several times. For you, when you're talking to these enterprise guys, what's the next call look like? Like, do they have a lot of time and you're just talking about the same thing from the first meeting, or do you always come up with a unique reason to meet them for the second time?
The first time is typically, let me show you what we're doing and see if it's a fit. And we
Right?
have a video demo we do. We show them quite literally us tracking 1 million plays and how in exact fraud cases we can find that are very unique. It's not like, oh, we catch
Yeah.
fraud. Like, look at this crazy fraud that's occurring and look at this use case. And they're like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And you show them and we don't black box it. We say, these are the exact flags we have. This is how it works.
Hmm.
And I think that gets them to being like, wow, that's crazy. I want to tell, like, I should bring in this. They're almost always, because it's a group buy purchase decision. I need to include 1, 2, 3 people.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
We've pre-wrote this PR FAQ for you to have that conversation. This is how the PR FAQs work. The
Hmm.
goal is for us to make you look like you're brilliant, and you tell us what questions did we miss and what other sort of objections do you get from around the table when you talk to people. We'll circle back in 4 weeks. Let's grab a coffee or a
So
drink and talk about
so
it.
so you guys, you're already assuming that they're on board, and let's work together to make the pitch as easy as possible, right?
Yeah.
So that's your approach. Wow. And then the second meeting is
What
like,
were the rebuttals? What were
yeah.
the problems? Like,
Wow.
what hurdles do we have that we have to clear? And how long do we think those hurdles will take? And sometimes it's literally like, especially in enterprise, we just don't have budget till Q1 of next year. Great. What can we do to make sure we're solidified for that budget now? So in the next meeting, let's deliver you some interesting update results, or what we've done to improve our algorithms, or let's look at a specific set of data that might affect you just on the side for you for fun, and see if we can provide some value for you along the way. Um, we
Wow.
always ask ourselves, like, how can we help that company, even if they're not our customer? And I think that's just how we lead moving forward. And eventually over time, they trust it, because if you're just constantly someone who's trying to do the right thing and trying to be positive and trying to help them, and then they see other people who trust you having successful results, I think it's just sort of, at least in our industry, it's a very tight knit, closed group and insular. And so they start talking to each other, and man, those Beatdapp guys are so smart, and they caught crazy amounts of fraud for me, or and that just sort of naturally happens. But that takes a lot of time and just consistency.
This is so cool. I think what I'm getting out of this, if I'm a B2B founder or marketer that's listening to this, focus on, there's two things that you guys did very well. You focus on the product. You really focus on product-led growth. You're constantly improving your machine learning algorithms so that you're really providing value. And then you guys are not selling something. You're not forcing or spending a lot of money on sales or marketing. Really, you're partnering up with these companies, and you're approaching it from a partnership standpoint. And when you're doing that, you're really caring about the other person on the other desk, and it's a lot easier to book these calls when you're really caring about
Yep.
someone. And I think it's
We've
so
turned
easy.
contracts down too. Like, we've had a couple companies that came to us and wanted to go. They're like, let's sign it. And then
Yeah.
they send over some data, and you say, hey guys, like, we're not going to have an optimal fit here. I'd love to take your money. Most
Mhm.
companies probably would take your money. I
Yeah.
would actually return your money, and we'll do the analysis for free, because I'm still going to try and help you, but we're not set up for success for how we charge. Like, meaning maybe you don't have enough data. So out of the 200 models, we can only provide real value on 7. Like, I'm not going to charge you for that. We're just going to help you. And
Hmm.
if possible, you'll say great things about us. Or we'll just say, we're not in a position to work with you because you don't have the inputs we need. And while you're willing to pay us, that's not the most important thing. Our reputation is the most important thing. We want everyone who works with us to say, man, those guys are incredible. Those guys have done the best possible job. They went above and beyond every single time. I know that the contract said this, but they included all these other things and did everything possible to make this relationship work. And to your point, if you view it as a partnership and you view it as a relationship, you will do whatever it takes to make that relationship successful. It's not like, oh, they didn't pay for this, so we have to do an amendment. Like, we just do what it takes to get things done and make people successful together with us.
And that's why you're getting second meetings, third meetings, fourth meetings, fifth meetings. Whereas so many B2B organizations struggle to get that second meeting. Maybe they'll get that first meeting because they're just jamming meeting requests down someone's throat. But the second meeting, they never hear back. And that's why, because you're not focusing on the other person. And people are smart. nowadays. People can tell when
Yeah.
a relationship or when an outreach is not authentic, and when you don't care about them. It doesn't take it's everything is B2B, but really, and I talked about this recently with someone. It's P2P, it's person to person. You're dealing with a business, but really you're dealing with another person, right? And
Yeah.
when you're talking to another person, people can feel authenticity, and um, yeah, you guys are just absolutely killing it. Super excited for you guys. What is coming up for 2023? What are your big goals? If you can just grab a magic wand and achieve, what would they look like?
Luckily, I don't think we're going to have to raise money ever again. I think we're in a. I mean, if we do, it'll be because we decide our technology can be applied to multiple verticals, or it'll be a completely different strategic change for the company. I think we have a really legitimate chance in the next like 12 to 18 months to become a billion-dollar company. And I think that that's pretty exciting for us and the whole team. So what I'm worried about, or what keeps me up at night, and the thing I could just waive would be making sure that we scale the technical talent that's required. Continuing to build our team without losing that sort of
Mm,
culture that we've really worked so hard to maintain and keep.
mhm,
So, I suspect we'll probably add another 5 to 10 onto the data team. We'll need, more customer success reps focused, but enterprise. So like your only customer is X, you know, account. Like your
right.
job is to build the best personal relationship with that account and make sure we have
Wow.
everything. Like, one way I hack that typically, just for anyone out there who's wondering like how do you do this, little side tip. I learned this from another company that I worked with, and I thought it was brilliant. We offer 24/7 support. Uh, so you're like, how do you do that without a call center? It's pretty simple. We have cell phones for people in the office, and if that phone rings and you answer it at any time of day, you get 2 grand. Like if if this phone
Wow.
rings and it is a customer, you answer that phone at 1 a.m. and solve a problem, and you get a bonus. That saves you from having to like have an entire. You talk about being lean. You don't have to go put a team in Europe. You just have to have someone willing to do the work when the phone rings and solve the problem quickly, and it's a really quick, fast paycheck. And if they do their job well, you don't have all that many of those problems that come up because most likely those people also aren't going to call you at a crazy hour. They're going to be respectful.
And
So
if I'm the team member, I will be excited to answer that phone call because I
I'm
know
pumped
I'm
for
getting
that
paid for it.
call.
Yeah, yeah, I'll want to take
Yeah.
it. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's super cool, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Want to take a quick shot before we
Why
jump out?
not? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Cool.
Thank you so much. It's been a very, very fun episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Uh,
Uh, well, we're gonna get you back. Get you back. We get you back on later on this year. Super excited. Hopefully, you guys will get close to that $1 billion mark in terms of company. That will be super exciting for you guys and for us because we got you guys on early. So,
I would
um,
love it.
hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you want to learn more about marketing, just hit that subscribe button and check out all the other videos we have with CEOs, CMOs, and founders. We post weekly here, so this way you won't miss any future episodes. Also, you can leave me a comment down below on what you think about this episode and also what else I can do or ask to make the show more fun for you. See you later.